let's talk about shame. In particular, my shame as a point of reference. I grew up really a lifetime of carrying the shame. But growing up, I would literally sit on the toilet alone with my cup of noodles, right? Then the Nissan cup of noodles, shrimp flavor, my favorite. And I'd be all alone, hiding, and really hiding from the world, but particularly the other kids, because if I were to interact with them, if I were to let them see me, it would potentially expose how unworthy, inadequate, and just bad I was, to use a lack of a better word, right? I just felt so small. I didn't have these concepts in my head. I didn't even know this kind of idea of shame, but I felt it and I hid as a result of it. But this pain isn't just about what happened in school, how it showed up in school, but it showed up way before that. And I grew up with a mother with very strong narcissistic traits. I wouldn't label her as a narcissist, but have the traits of it, big time. And how that showed up was lots of control, not given the freedom, basically just the freedom and acknowledgement that I can have needs, I can have interests, I can make decisions, I can make mistakes and learn from those mistakes, and it's okay. And so that was robbed of me. And as a result of that, I didn't develop the confidence and I felt inadequate naturally. But I went further than that. You know, if I made a mistake, if I expressed myself, if I had too many needs or whatever, it was met with lots of criticism, shame, guilting. And if it wasn't those words, it was the expression, the cold shoulder, right? The expression in her face that I did something wrong, that I'm not allowed to do that, right? That I'm not allowed to have, or really not allowed to be my authentic self. And so it created this sense of shame that I'm not worthy or loved enough to just have needs or express needs, whatever it is, wants, desires, dreams, goals. And so the only thing I could do was just be passive, to not have them, to go with the flow, to people please, to not really have a say about how I want to live life. And so that wasn't just emotional shaming, but it's also physical, right? Because it was oftentimes too met with physical violence, spanking, slapping me in the face. It's just all that energy, whether it's emotional or physical, that I can't be myself. Therefore, myself is not good enough. Myself is shameful. I have to be something else. A good son, a good boy, a good kid. And so, that carried over into childhood. That carried over through childhood into school, as I gave you examples of that already. But it wasn't even just the kids at school that I was scared of and hiding from. Even in the classroom, I wanted to hide from the teachers, right? The adults. And I would literally hide in the very back of the classroom in the far corner, right? No one can see me. Don't pick on me. Don't see me. Because if I were to be picked to answer a question, very scary. What if I say the wrong thing? Again, where did I learn that from? It started at home. If I did the wrong answer, made a mistake, shame, criticism, I did something wrong. I'm bad, right? I'm the problem. I'm inadequate, so on and so forth, right? Just not enough in all the ways you can imagine. And so, as much as I carried the shame, as much as I tried to hide to try to not feel more of the shame when making contact with people, because then they see me and then they see that blackness inside me. But I also wanted connection, even though I had that. There's an inherent desire inside me for connection. And so I wanted the connection, so I'm going to do something to get, even though the shame is there. So how do I do that? I learned to mask myself, right? I learned to create personas, different personas. Easygoing, nice, unreactive, confident, right? The persona of confidence, that I have everything figured out. And then how that would lead into later on in life was like being the achiever, right? If I couldn't feel worthy enough just as I am, then if I achieve, I can feel that. I can cover that feeling up. I can feel better about myself, better about the shame inside. And so getting success, doing well, making a lot of money, those kind of things became my way to get connection as well as cope and adapt to this held pain of shame inside. But also, in my young adult years, was learning to become a womanizer. So I put on this confident sort of playboy caricature of myself, that was successful and confident and didn't care about intimacy, right? Like I was detached, but really I was very attached. So I was trying to use that to counter that, to get the connection. It's kind of funny, the games that I played with myself, right? If I could come off aloof, then I could get the attention that I want. If I could come off confident and, not desperate, I could get the attention. And it worked. It worked with other women who were also desperate for connection as well, right? Energy matches energy. But it was all from a fake persona, covering up the pain, the shame, the low self-worth, the inadequacy. But at least I got connection, right? At least I got crumbs of connection, even though it's superficial connection, superficial validation, superficial attention that wasn't even attention based off of my authentic self, based off of this persona that was really separate from me. And it all came to a head eventually, crashing down when I met my, at the time, girlfriend, but she's now my wife. And started off extremely toxic, right? I mean, all my relationships were already toxic. With my mother, enmeshment, codependent. My friends, codependent, people-pleasing, being taken advantage of. And the same thing happened with my wife, right? Both of us codependent towards each other in different ways, expressing that in different ways. Her more anxious attachment, more avoidant attachment myself. Me passive, fawning, people-pleasing. Her controlling, aggressive, and so on. And so that created a lot of pain and fighting. And that pain, those fights were so excruciating that, of course, like a lot of people, we went to seek help, right? So that was like the basic stuff, the basic therapy, couples therapy, the CBT, the DBT, all the forms of, T's, the three-letter therapies, all of them really. And through that, developed this awareness of like, whoa, wait a minute. How I thought I was, even my relationship with my mom, or even having an absent father figure actually affected me and is causing problems now, a revelation. But it wasn't creating change inside me. The shame was still there. Those emotional wounds were still there. Really, I call them spiritual wounds, right? The low self-worth, the abandonment issues, the shame, and so on. And so my wife and I struggled massively, where we were working on it, but the fights were happening. It was like we were getting into a fight and everything just went to sleep in terms of what we learned in the therapy sessions, the books we were reading, the couples therapy. And that's how strong the pain is when it's not being addressed directly. And it wasn't being addressed directly until we started to go beyond conventional therapy and beyond intellectualization and go and start to do work that was more spiritual, that was more exploring the full experience inside, right? Not just the mental aspect. Lots of spiritual work, lots of crazy psychedelic plant medicines, even the crazy stuff that can literally kill you. If your heart's not strong enough, it will kill you. So there's different plant medicines that do that. But it rips open the coping mechanisms, the suppression, the protection mechanisms that I put in place unconsciously to repress and suppress the pain. I can't think my way out of it anymore. I have to feel it. So it exposes it. The waves, a mountain of anxiety, of me just not feeling safe in the world exposed. I had no idea it was there. The mountains and waves of shame percolating up to the surface. And when it moves and releases in layers, lots of layers, I feel it coming out. And when you feel it coming out, it feels like death. It feels like you just don't want to live anymore. But in surrendering, in letting go of trying to fight it on its way up and out, and you feel it, there's the other side of that I started to experience for the first time. Glimpses of self-love, glimpses of self-acceptance, glimpses of the very feelings that are the opposite side of shame, right? Peace, acceptance, tranquility, even euphoric states, transcendent states, from like absolute darkness, even terror at times, to like bliss. I didn't even know what that was or what that felt like until I experienced it. And then back and forth, experiencing back and forth, back and forth. And so then that journey, I was able to really start to shed bits of these layers. But I ran into a problem. My wife and I, as we're doing this work together, right? When I say do it together, we're not like the couples therapy, venting about problems. We're both individually working on ourselves but in a relationship, right? I would find out that like I would have an experience, whether I went to a seminar, like a Tony Robbins seminar, or a spiritual one, or a retreat, or working with plant medicine, that's really can be a very profound experience. I found that I would slowly start to slip back into my old baseline, right? Still go into avoidant patterns, hiding patterns, withdrawing patterns, masking, right? Creating these, coming back to these old personas of like being a pleaser, going with the flow, being passive, at least in relationships. And the fighting would still come up. And I was just like confused, like we're having these experiences. They're very deep, very intense, but it's not translating fully, right? Little bits and pieces, but it feels like we're just kind of we're sliding back to baseline. And so it wasn't until like doing this for, a few years that I started to realize, wait a minute, I have to like develop this day-to-day conscious practice of getting out of the head, out of the spiritual concepts, out of the psychoanalysis of my mind, and into my body. And that has to be an ongoing practice of learning to just feel what's there. Oversimplifying it, but mostly the idea is to feel what's there. And the more I got better at feeling, then things started to shift in a way where it was sticky. Building that relationship with my body, my nervous system, but also subconscious, right? So a lot of these subconscious triggers and thoughts, old fears come into the head. And to be able to be really good as a muscle to practice, oh, I'm having fearful thoughts, I'm disconnected. That means I'm disconnected from my body. That means that the little boy needs connection inside. And I need to connect to him. And I need to feel my body at the same time, both. And that's where the change really began to stuck, where like I would go to, the first few times I would go to things like a men's retreat, which was very triggering for me because I have father wounds, I had an absent father. And so men were always uncomfortable for me to interact with, right? I learned the communication skills to just force and learn to do it well, but inside didn't feel like I was at ease with myself. So when I would go to the men's retreats, for example, I would be stuck in my head. What am I going to say? What do they think about me? Anxiety, discomfort, just playing these mental gymnastics. But then when I started to really release the shame by feeling through it and building a relationship with the shame and the feeling, it really started to release, and it could translate in how I showed up socially with people, where I was like, oh, I'm not caring how they think about me as much. I'm not calculating and trying to anticipate, what am I going to say next? How am I going to present myself? Right? Who's going to like me? Who's going to not like me? And getting fixated on judgments and really allowing a let go and detachment. But it wasn't a mental detachment, because we can tell ourselves detach, it doesn't matter. But like I could feel like I just didn't care. Less and less. It was gradual, less and less. And that created freedom to finally start to really show up more authentically and have a lot more fun and present and embodied, what it comes down to. Ultimately, I went through a journey of getting stuck in the intellectual hamster wheel, the psychotherapy, the books, seminars, all that stuff, right? Very minimal progress with that, but lots of awareness, right? Learning about trauma patterns. And then going deep into very deep emotional work, spiritual work, plant medicines, but also not really integrating that, right? It was an experience that came and went. And I did what I see a lot of people do, which is like either do the seminar high, chasing the seminar high, like the Tony Robbins stuff, or the plant medicine high, right? You go to a retreat, you have a big, powerful experience. You thought you faced your demons, and you felt bliss at the same time, and then the experience fades, and then you're back to your baseline after just give it a few weeks, and then the stuff comes up again. So the ongoing daily practice of building that relationship with my body, my emotions, my feelings, practicing expressing them, and really meeting every trigger as an opportunity to get more in touch with my feelings more and more, was where the transformation happened. And it wasn't one moment, one single event that created transformation in me. It was the continual progression, right? The consistency of doing the right things in the right way, which is very simple. And there is a process, but really, simply put, is really like when I find myself stuck in my thoughts, I bring my attention to my body. Oh, I have these thoughts. They're angry thoughts. They're fearful thoughts. They're this or that. What's happening in my body, and bring the whole experience there. I don't need to figure out jack shit. Bring the awareness to the body and let the body trust the body to do the work. It's not that I am a healed person. I mean, if I were to be a healed person, or anyone, they would be on the level of Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, whatever spiritual leaders that people look up to over thousands of years. But what I have come to a state of being is more acceptance, more compassion, more giving myself space, more authenticity, more slowing down to be with myself, to allow myself to experience myself moment to moment, less distractions. And, there's less fear that runs my life. Substantially less. Doesn't mean there's no fear. And there is definitely fears that pop up here and there. But it's not the dominant feeling anymore. And to me, that's massive relief and transformation. That was, a transformation that happened gradually over time. And if you can get to that, or anyone, that is what I've seen being in this journey, and over $330,000 invested in personal development, healing. I'm doing so many things, and what I've observed in that journey alongside everybody else in that path, and what I've experienced in my own life, and now even working with thousands of clients now, is that transformation is like the dominant heavy emotion is not running your life anymore. It's now more of the minority, right? Even if it's 40% there, that's still a minority. That's still massive progress for a lot of people, and myself included. The dominant emotions that run their life is like 70, 80, maybe even 90%, right? And that's going to affect your body, your relationships. Everything's going to be really painful, stressful. But if you can get that down to 40%, 30%, right? That's huge. And so I shared a story that there is hope and healing. If you're stuck now, I know how painful it is inside, how painful the shame is, how painful the low self-worth is, even feelings of abandonment and inadequacy, or just feeling so unsafe around people. I know those pains. I know how they can control your life, how it can change your behavior, and compel you to do all these old, very old, repeating coping mechanisms. And so it can be changed. But I also want to be real, that takes a hell of a lot of work. You got to find the right work to do. You got to do it consistently. And you just ultimately have to have the courage and willpower to do it and stick in it. And you will find that the change happens. And really, a big one that can shortcut that process for you is getting out of the mind. Don't spiritually bypass. Don't intellectually bypass. You don't need to figure out more and more of your trauma, where it came from. It's part of it to a degree, but it's only 10% of it. 90% of the work that I have experienced in myself, I've seen in others, I've seen in clients, in my relationship, 90% of that work is that relationship with your body, your nervous system, those emotions, those feelings that we don't want to feel, but we gotta feel them gradually. And that's the path to freedom, right? Connection to your body, and really the full experience of yourself, because we are not just our mind and our thoughts. It feels like that at times. We're a full ecosystem, and the rest of that ecosystem needs attention. So anyways, I'm just going to cut this now before I ramble on further. Definitely subscribe for more content, or if you want to apply, you want to learn more about what my healing journey is like and how it might apply to you, you can also fill out the application and join my mentorship. So anyways, see you next time.